So as Ilsa said, I am going to talk to you for about the next 20 minutes about a lot of lessons that we've learned over the last 10 years developing what we call in the United States OER and probably everywhere, but open educational resources. So my background, as Ilsa said, is learning sciences. I got my doctorate in 2010 from the University of Washington and have spent most of my career sort of focusing on the intersection of learning and technology, mostly in what we call in the U.S. K-12 education, and I focus on student learning and teacher learning in those settings. So how did the OER project, how does this work? All right, how did the OER project, so OER. So for those of you who aren't familiar, OER are basically just free educational resources. You can find them all over the web. It's most common place we find them. And there's a ton of definitions out there for OER. But the bottom line is that you can take them, you can revise them, you can redistribute them, you can use them in any way you want. If any of you are former classroom teachers, there's all these opportunities to go online and find these free resources. One of the OER is fantastic, but one of the problems with it is that it's never comprehensive. So it's pick and choose and find this and find that. And that's kind of posing a problem. There's all this great stuff out there, but it's not all put together for teachers. And teachers are already so short on time that we want to provide them with something high quality and comprehensive. And so what happens as a result is we're still really very much bought into the whole textbook industry. And it's a huge, huge industry, as I'm sure you all know. It's, millions and millions and millions of dollars a year. Schools spend a ton of money on textbooks that are often sort of a thunk on the desk that maybe aren't the best quality thing out there, and they're old quickly, they're outdated quickly, they're not easy to update, and so it's become this really sort of dinosaur industry that we really think needs to change. So how did the OER project start? Well, it started 10 years ago, and so you probably recognize the guy on the right is Bill Gates, and the guy on the left is this guy named David Christian, who started something called the Big History Project, which is the history of the universe from the Big Bang to today. And Bill is a guy who takes in tons of information all the time, and he was on his treadmill, probably 11 years ago, watching what we call the Great Lecture Series, and he listened to this lecture by David Christian about big history and thought, this is amazing, we should make this a course for students. And so he hired some educators, he does not do this stuff himself, and sort of said, I want you to turn this into a course, but I want you to do some very specific things with this course. First, I want it to be amazing. I want it to be free. I want it to really empower teachers. So, coming out of Bill's office, obviously we love technology, but he also has a really great respect for teachers and the importance of teachers, and that technology can be assistive, and it's kind of a theme we've heard all day. There's a time and a place for it. It's not a be-all, end-all. And if the pandemic taught us anything, it's that online learning maybe doesn't always work. And it especially doesn't work for those students who are traditionally underserved and behind. And so he really wanted to, close an equity gap and frankly disrupt the textbook industry to a degree. He also wanted to make sure that we delivered our content online. Now, we do not have an online course, but everything we give is online. And all our textbooks are a mix of articles, videos, activities, instructional approaches, and other things that can be very easily updated, changed out, moved around. Also, and I'll talk about this in a bit, gives us an opportunity to collect a lot of data about what it is we're doing. So before I dig into the role of sort of the problem with textbooks and some of the issues we found with education and some of the solves we think we've come up with, I want to just tell you a little bit about our reach over the last 10 years. So we have, over 10 years, we've had 1 million students take our course in full. So we're really proud of that number. When we hit our 10-year anniversary this last summer and discovered that, we were kind of blown away. We didn't know that we'd hit that many people. We have 20,000 active teachers currently, And we have developed, since we created the big history project, we studied it for years. We take kind of a design-based research approach to everything we do, and we studied it for years and years. And when we finally felt like we had a good model, we started building other courses. So we now have 3 sort of different flavors of world history courses, and then we have these extension courses. And so you can see we started out with 6 teachers in 2013, and now we're up to the 20,000 mark. I'm going to breeze over this next slide pretty quickly, but this tells you just this is what we've done in the past year. So we've hit about a third of U.S. high schools. There are 40,000 middle and high schools in the U.S. That's kind of grades 6 through 12, or probably ages 12 to 18. I mentioned we produce a ton of our own videos. We've had almost 1 million people access our videos on YouTube. And just in the past year, we've had almost 2 million students access our materials on Khan Academy. So again, those are, we have the 1 million who've taken the full courses, and then we have this other group who have access stuff. So we have some really exciting things like all the readings we offer are at 4 to 5 reading levels, and they all have audio versions. So a lot of teachers will go and grab our articles, or they'll go grab a video, or just, we have I'll talk about it in a bit too, but some AI tools that assist in writing. So some people just go in and take little pieces of it, and then there's many more people who teach the whole course. So let's talk a little bit about this whole textbook problem that we were kind of facing. So textbooks are super important, right? You have to have a curriculum. You have to have some basis for teaching. And we think about textbooks as helping teachers learn to teach. And the analogy we like to use is that we need to help teachers learn to cook like they learn to teach. And we think of the traditional big thunk on the desk textbook kind of like the old TV dinner. I'm sure everybody at some point in their life has had, you take the frozen dinner out of the freezer, you heat it up. It's easy to use. It kind of does the job. It's not that good. It's kind of designed to be served as is. You don't really make adjustments to it. Now, on the other hand, as I mentioned earlier, there's these OER lesson repositories that you can find lessons all over the place. You have all this stuff. But if you're a newer teacher, and you go online and you're looking for stuff, it can become overwhelming incredibly quickly. And so we think of OER out there in the world kind of as the CSA box is what we call them in the States. I don't know if anybody has those here, but it's kind of this, you go to the farm once a week, or they deliver it to the city once a week, and you get all these fruits and vegetables, and you're like, oh, there's kohlrabi, what is that? What do I do with it? I have no idea. And so we kind of think about that as sort of the OER that's out there in the world. And we want to place ourselves somewhere in the middle. So everything we develop is towards the first and second year teacher. We want to make sure that if you're new to the classroom, you have exactly what you need. You have instructional approaches, you have options. But we also want things to be flexible for our more skilled and veteran teachers. And so we've landed in this space where we kind of want to be the meal kit of textbooks. And so one of the things that's become really popular back at home in the last 5 or 10 years are these meal kits. So it's a box of food, it's delivered to your door. There's this really awesome recipe card that tells you exactly what to do to cook a meal. It's pre-portioned all your vegetables and your proteins and whatever else there is, and they tell you exactly how to cook it, why you should cook it that way. And if you follow the steps, you'll end up with a pretty good gourmet meal. Now, once you've started using your meal card for a while, you might start to make adjustments or say, like, I don't want it soy sauce in that, or I'm going to leave that thing out. And so we wanted to kind of be in this sweet spot. So how do we do that, and how do we make the textbook the sweet spot? How do we really get all that going? Because it's not just that book; it's a lot of stuff that surrounds the book. Education is a whole ecosystem, as you know, and there's a lot more that goes on than just the textbook. So we really think about what we're calling a surround sound approach to education. And so the teacher is in the middle, and I'm going to kind of breeze over this one, but the teacher's in the middle, and then we have all these other things surrounding that textbook. So what do we have? So this slide is sort of like what we think of as the card in our meal kit, right? This is the big recipe card. So in the middle is the teacher. Then sort of surrounding the teacher is the textbook or the curriculum. So, there's a couple things that we feel like are really important about curriculum: engaging content, it's inquiry based, and we're really focused on marrying skills and content at this point. And so that was mentioned quite a bit this morning, especially in the workplace, about getting skills, because we're in social studies a lot, but kids are having to learn more and more and more information all the time. And one way to fit that in is to marry skills and content together. Now, the next thing that's really important is professional development, because you can't just give a teacher a textbook and go, okay, good luck, have a good time with that. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about professional development, and where technology has really come in to help professional development, so it's an ongoing, continuous conversation. Then another piece that we find really important, kind of wrapping around that, is a teacher community or a professional learning community, a community of practice. And we want to make sure that teachers have a community of teachers around them that they can talk to, they can ask questions to, they can troubleshoot with. And that's where technology has made a huge difference for us. And as I mentioned earlier, we have an online platform where we deliver our course. So again, not an online course, but everything is retrieved online. You can download it. Kids can get online. There's teacher-facing views, there's student-facing views, and it just makes it really easy to edit, update, refresh, and again, follow what we're doing. And then there's this other piece that I think a lot of educators tend to ignore, which is outreach and marketing. So there is a ton of really great stuff out there, but if you don't know about it, it's not that great. It's sort of the tree falls in the wood kind of idea. So let's dig a little deeper into some of this. So the problem with content in the textbook. So, teachers need more than just good content. Too often, it's, schools, everywhere has all these standards, all these things that students need to learn, and it often just becomes one thing after another. And one thing that we've learned, especially that we found in big history, is that every course needs a driving narrative. You need to be able to start the beginning of the year, give students the roadmap, tell the story, and revisit it throughout. Where did we start? Where are we going? Where did we end? And then you can look back. Then there's this idea around skills. So skills require regular practice, but often it's disjointed and disconnected. So you think about maybe a math class where you learned addition, then you learned subtraction, then you moved on to multiplication, and you don't really build them. And then again, connecting content and skills to make things stick also becomes really important. So these to us were some of the major problems that were facing us when we got started. So what do we do to address that? So we offer what we call a skills-based approach to content. So for every skill in the course, students start with a very simple introduction, usually nothing to do with content itself. It can be a fun story, an anecdote, something like that. You teach them about that. And then students revisit these skills over and over and over again throughout the course. They become more difficult as students go. There's a release of what we call scaffolding a lot in education. And it's this idea that you need to practice and reinforce and practice and reinforce. But of course, each time you practice the skill, it's new content. So you get better and better and better. And you have all these multiple opportunities. And then again, every course has a driving narrative. And then some courses actually have multiple driving narratives. So if you think about history, for example, there's a lot of different viewpoints. So maybe there's the history of the world from the perspective of a community, or from the perspective of production and distribution. So sometimes there's multiple narratives. And all of this, everything we're talking about is backed by research and our own research. So everything we've done, we've studied really deeply, both from an organizational level and what we're doing as a learning organization, all the way down to how teachers are learning and how students are learning. So the other thing we think is really important is that the curriculum is what we call educative. So again, if you are that first-year teacher, first-year teachers are just swimming in it. It's really tough to be a first-year teacher, even a second-year teacher, sometimes even a fifth-year teacher. It takes a really, really long time. And we want to make sure that teachers have everything they need to be successful. So of course we start with standards. We make sure that we're hitting ticking all the boxes you need to tick to make sure that you're satisfying the state and the government and all that. And we provide really robust guidance for our rookie teachers. So if there are, we talk about in their curriculum, like what misconceptions could you anticipate? If you ask your students this question, some might say this, some might say this. Here are some ways you could respond to that. It's very, very detailed. Now, if you're a more advanced teacher, you can ignore it because you know what you're doing. If you, for example, have an approach to discussion in the classroom that works for you, by all means, use that. Don't use what we suggest. Do what works for you, and then actually share it with us, because chances are what teachers are doing in the classroom is going to be the best thing going on, and then we'll build that into our own work. So we want to make sure that we're sort of flexible but also rigid. So again, thinking of that meal card where you start to modify and do some different things. So, one of the next issues, and, I didn't talk about the problem as much here, but professional development. Professional development, this is kind of a professional development setting. We're all here learning new things. And PD has been a problem that education hasn't really figured out a great way to scale, right? So I think we can probably all agree, and it's super fun to be here together and get to talk to each other and see each other off Zoom, that really the best professional development is sort of like, in the States, we'd probably say like by the pool, there's a buffet. Here it might be at the pub having a pint, where you get together, you get to connect, you get to collaborate, you get to learn. But the typical model is usually that it's sort of like 2 days in August before school starts. You get a fire hose of information, and then they send you off into the classroom. And you're getting so much stuff ready to go. It's really difficult to remember what you did and what can apply and all of that. So we've kind of figured out this mixed model that we're finding works really well. Because the other thing, too, is teachers don't have time. So they can't show up, it's unreasonable to say, after school today, come do this. People have families, they have children, they have, lives and other things going on. And so we still love our time together. We haven't had it in a few years, but every January we have what we call a teacher leader summit, and we will be coming together again this year for a bunch of our teachers. But that's just a starting point. We also have what we call PLEs, personalized learning experiences. So they're these courses that are probably 12 to 14 hours long. You can get online, choose your own adventure. You can do it over the summer to learn about a course. You can do it piecemeal as you get to different parts of the course. It's however you want to do it. We also have a bunch of synchronous learning sessions. So, we have things we call skills clinics. If you want to know more about how to teach historical causation, for example, we'll have sessions for that. If you can't be there live and in person, we film them all or we record them all, and then you can go back and, watch it when you want to. Now, let's say you do that. Let's say you go watch you can't go to the session, you watch the webinar, you have a bunch of questions. We have a very, very robust teacher community, which we absolutely love, where we have thousands of active teachers in our community. There are a million different conversations going on at the same time. And if you drop into our community and you ask a question, and it could frankly be about one of our courses, it can be about education more generally, you're going to get a response within a few hours. Now, this is not completely organic. It is highly managed. We have teachers that we pay you're on tap this week to be in there and responding to the community. We have somebody in our organization who is just our community manager. There's different programming. But we want to really mimic that idea of I can walk down the hallway and talk to another teacher. Maybe I had a lesson that bombed and I want to find out, did it go better for them? What should I do differently? It's where a lot of teachers share their own ideas. It's where they share student work. So teachers have a good sense of, what does good look like, or what does not good look like, or how did this work out for me? And a lot of stuff that goes on in our teacher community ends up being incorporated into our curriculum. And so that's also the beauty of that online delivery, is you can kind of just go, okay, great. That was a great idea. We're going to build it in for next year. So you end up being able to have this 365-day conversation. So it's ongoing professional development. It is always happening. It is always available to you. If you don't have time this week, great. Maybe you'll have time next week. We have an online conference every summer that you can access whenever you want. So it really gives this opportunity for all different teachers in all different places to get what they need when they need it. So kind of just-in-time PD. I forgot to click forward, so that was that one. And then the last thing we think a lot about is, one of the problems with textbooks too is that you can't get any information about what people are doing with them, right? So you send them off into the world, you don't know what's good, you don't know what's bad, you don't know what they're using, you don't know if students are learning. Typically what goes out with a textbook is at the end of a chapter, there might be some chapter quizzes or questions, but you still don't know what's happening. And so by delivering online, we can see what people are using. We do tons of research on student learning. Every year, we do tons of research on teacher perceptions, student perceptions. We want to know about engagement. We want to know if they like the stuff. It's really important. Do you like it? Is it engaging? If it's not, we're going to change it. So we have the sort of research level of data and tools, but then we also have tools that we're able to build in. So we have something called Revision Assistant, which provides students with feedback as they write. Now, again, we don't think anything is as good as the teacher to give you personalized feedback, but there are these great new tools coming out all the time that can assist in the classroom. They can help the teacher go from rookie to veteran much faster. Maybe you can make students smarter faster, move the needle along. So there are these really wonderful places for technology. We don't think technology can ever replace a teacher. The social nature of learning in the classroom, kind of as Nigel talked about earlier, those spaces in between and those interactions are so important. And technology is not going to take over that, but data and tools can really enhance what's happening. And we think that's incredibly important. So, and then this last piece is kind of, we think about informative assessment. So again, at every level, at everything we do, whether it's our group, our little group of people who are developing curriculum and studying it, we're looking at everything we're doing and we're making changes. We're doing that with students. We're encouraging teachers to do that. We have rubrics. We want to make sure students too also have a very clear understanding of where they are in the learning process. So we provide rubrics. We provide tons of examples. Again, what does good look like? We don't do that a lot for students. And that's also what teachers can do, is they can share, hey, my kids did this. This was a really great example of something. So this allows us to constantly evaluate, reevaluate, and change. So what's next? Well, we're at the 10-year mark, and we're really proud of what we've done. And we want to think about now, what are we going to do in the next 10 years? And, 1 million students over 10 years is awesome. What about 1 million students a year? What about 10 million students a year? So, we've built this model that we feel like is proven at this point, and we feel like it's scalable. However, we are what we consider this small innovation studio. We cannot do it by ourselves. Ultimately, our goal is that we would like to provide high quality, free OER for every learner in every subject in every country. But we can't do it ourselves. And so we're moving into a space where we're sharing our model with other people. And we feel like there's a space for everyone to be involved in OER. And maybe it's just the textbook part of it, or maybe it's just the professional development. Maybe it's the marketing piece or the community piece. We don't expect everyone to do everything, but we do hope that people will kind of start to join this mission of developing these free comprehensive materials, or coming together so that everybody can take a piece of it. And it doesn't always have to be free. I understand people do need to make money. And so there are these opportunities, we think, though, that, maybe part of what you do is offered for everyone for free, and then to get the extra piece, you have to pay a little for something. So we are in a space, we want to share our model, we want to bring people along. So, if anyone is interested, it's not on the slide, but it will go out, but we are www.oerproject.com. Check out our website. You can reach out to help@oerproject.com, or you can get my information. And we'd be happy to meet with you and chat about what we've learned and do a deeper dive on what we've learned in different aspects. And we really hope that, as a group and as a community of educators, we can kind of move on to the next phase of what textbooks should look like, and really make sure that everyone out there is provided with an opportunity to have a high quality education. So thank you.